massive story that's breaking at the moment that could have huge repercussions for the world and indeed India. The Supreme Court of the United States has just a short while ago ruled against President Donald Trump's powers to impose tariffs, declaring that his use of this emergency authority was illegal and unlawful. The US Supreme Court, in a 6-3 verdict, so a fairly comprehensive verdict, has held that Trump's aggressive approach to tariffs on products entering the United States from across the world was not permitted under a 1977 law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Joining me now is Rohit Sharma, joins me from Washington, D.C. Anisha Mathur joins us here. She tracks the courts here. But I want to go to you, Rohit, first. This is a major setback to Donald Trump, who over the last 9 months has weaponized tariffs, including against India. What are Trump's options now that the court has ruled against him?
Well, President Trump has two options, Rajdeep. I mean, this is definitely a major setback for the president, who actually wanted the Supreme Court to uphold his executive order, which they did not. It was kind of given after we heard the arguments back in November. So I think President Trump was trying, and he knew that this could happen. We have Senator Lindsey Graham, who's championed a bill in the Congress, in the Senate that has about 80 co-sponsors. So I think that would be his default option. Now Lindsey Graham in this case, could actually table that in Senate, get it passed, push it to House, and then make it legal. So that's number one. The other option that President Trump has is the Section 232 tariffs of the Trade Expansion Act. But this is limited in terms that he could only do this for 6 months. So we'll have to wait and watch what President Trump does. He was supposed to get into a meeting. He was supposed to actually do a press pool spray with governors. But as soon as the news broke out, everybody was ushered out of the room, the press, I mean. And I think the White House is currently huddling to see what would they do next. But this is definitely a major setback. And in terms of what impacts it would have on other countries, look, the countries that have already negotiated a trade agreement, including India, I don't think there would be any, repercussions or consequences of that. I think those deals will stay as it is. I don't think anybody would like to upset President Trump. The only, outlier is European Union, and they have not signed a deal with President Trump. And I think that would be another major setback if European Union wants to weaponize this and try to, do another set of negotiation based on this ruling.
But what happens to the existing tariffs? For example, with India at the moment, the tariffs do still remain, as we speak, at 25%. There was, of course, the additional 25% tariff that he imposed on oil purchases from Russia. Does all that go as of tonight? Or is that still on paper there until such time as the Senate decides next? What happens to actually, in legal terms, to the tariffs as we speak today?
So technically two things, Razi. First, yes, according to Supreme Court, the president did not have authority to do that. So yes, on paper, maybe they're not legal anymore, right? So there shouldn't be any. The other thing, and this gets really complicated here, is Supreme Court did not address the question that President Trump really wanted to have answered, which was, okay, you can turn it illegal if you think this is not right. But what about the money US has collected, the tariff money US has collected in the last 10 months or so? And they've left it out of the opinion. They have not ruled anything on that. And this is where I think it's going to get a little interesting. There are people who are trying to understand and decode what happens with that. But for now, in legal terms, they've vacated that, meaning essentially, there is not going to be any tariffs. They have not ruled on what happens as to with the tariffs in terms of, do they stay? Does President Trump come out and do another executive order?
No, so do we go back? Do we go back to pre-April 1, pre the so-called Liberation Day? Are tariffs back at those rates?
According to this ruling, that is the assumption that this is where it stands. But we'll have to wait and watch. I mean, it's a 170-page long opinion, Rajdeep. It's pretty complicated in that sense also. So we'll have to understand. But now, meaning from now on forward, what we can definitely say is President Trump cannot issue another set or slap more tariffs on anybody using an executive order. That is there. Now, what happens previously? Do we go back to before April 1st? I think we'll have to wait and read and understand and break it down from the very, very interesting language that the Supreme Court has used in its 170-page opinion.
I want to go to Anisha Mathur also. Anisha, have you looked at this tariff law and the way it operates? If this is a 6-3 verdict, the key question is whether it has any retrospective effect in terms of the tariffs that existed between April and February. Do we go back to a pre-April situation? Donald Trump could technically go to the Senate and try and push these tariffs through the Senate now.
Well, Rajdeep, to answer that question is going to take a lot more insight into the US law. But what we can tell you right now from reading this 170-page verdict is that the court of the US Supreme Court, in its majority verdict, has gone into the interpretation of IEEPA and the power of the president alone. They have not gone into the issue of refunds. They have not gone into the issue of what effect it will have with the foreign affairs and the various agreements. In fact, the dissenting opinion by Justice Kavanaugh has in fact noted this point, that the interim effects of the court's decisions could be substantial. But as far as the majority opinion is concerned, Rajdeep, all I can tell you is that they have gone on the interpretation, and only the interpretation of the IEEPA, saying that since the Congress did not specifically confer this power on the president could not have imposed unilateral tariffs, that the president does not have the power to impose such tariffs during peacetime, even if the US government had argued that the wartime emergency powers allows the president to take such unilateral action. So as our colleague was also saying, Rajdeep, we'll have to see how this pans out in the next few days, because the question of whether the tariffs already collected would have to be refunded, what impact it will have on the foreign affairs, what impact it will have on the agreements that the US government has inked with various governments, including our government. All of that we'll have to wait and see what the next step is, because this is something that the dissenting opinion has flagged, that it could have a cascading effect.
I just want to I want to go now to guests who are joining me from New York and Washington. Leigh Locker is joining me from Washington, D.C. Daniel Block, Senior Editor Foreign Affairs, is joining me from New York. Daniel, we've had you before on the show, and it appears at the moment that with these tariffs being ruled illegal, what are Donald Trump's options now? There are lots of questions over what happens to the existing tariff structure that he's put in place. Does that go away overnight, or can he go to the Senate?
Well, I think there's a few things that Trump can try to do and probably will do. It's worth saying that none of them are going to be easy or clean replacements for the tariffs. He can try and go to Congress, to the Senate and the House. I think he's going to have a tremendous amount of trouble. In fact, I'm confident saying he will not be able to replicate this tariff regime by going through Congress. There's too much opposition there. The process would be too legislatively difficult. Maybe they will sign off on some tariffs on some countries, but the broad sweeping tariffs that he implemented through this law, he will not be able to get anything like that through Congress. Now, there are other acts that the White House thinks it can use to recreate some of these tariffs. So they may try and unilaterally recreate this tariff regime under other authorities, but it's really unclear whether they'll be able to do that as well. I mean, there's a reason they went to this law first, to try and create their sweeping tariff regime. They don't see the other laws as providing the same degree of flexibility, and they could do that, and the Supreme Court could again strike it down. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we wind up seeing a kind of cat and mouse game where the White House tries going to other laws in order to impose tariffs on various countries, and then the Supreme Court again steps in and says no. That said, again, I think they will struggle to recreate this tariff regime. It's a huge loss. And of note, it's really the first time that we've seen this Supreme Court, which has been generally quite friendly to Trump, step in and say, this is something that you can't do. This is an instance where you've gone beyond your powers and beyond your authority.
Very, very interesting. Leigh Locker joining me from Washington, D.C. Has America been caught a bit by surprise? There are those who tell me, why did it take so long for the courts to decide on it? Others who are saying better late than never. What's the general mood or sense that you think how will Washington see this, particularly the U.S. Congress?
Well, Congress now has no incentive to support any kind of tariff that Trump tries to ram through. The court has ruled. People have been waiting for this for months, for the court to issue its opinion. They assumed that it was going to be the tariffs were going to be thrown out, even with the 6-3, Republican appointed majority, and 3 of these justices being Trump appointees. People assume that just on the face of it, these things were illegal, and that has been proven true. Plus, we had economic growth numbers come out. The economy only grew 2.2% in 2025, in large part because of tariffs. So why would you want to support something that's proven to be a downer in terms of economic growth? And Trump has been weakening politically, over the last few months. We saw it in the November elections where Democrats won by wide margins. We're seeing it in special elections. There's not a lot of people who want to go out on a limb for Donald Trump right now. And the fact that there's a 6-3 majority against him on the tariffs is very telling, since he stacked this court with 3 of his own people, and 2 of them, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, ruled against him.
So, but is he still spoiling for a fight? I mean, it's ironic that all of this is coming where all the attention in the last few days has been about US preparing possibly to strike at Iran. Along comes a strike now from the Supreme Court aimed at Donald Trump. Is he spoiling for a fight? Will he look for a weapon of mass distraction, possibly Iran? Or do you believe that at the moment, do you think he can really confront the Supreme Court?
He'll try. He's always spoiling for a fight. Haven't you been paying attention for the last 10 years? That's how he operates. He's always looking for a fight. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if planes were in the air over Iran right now because of this. You have the Epstein files with all that. You have this bogus board of peace in which he's shaking down foreign countries for money to do something in Gaza, which may never happen. Remember, this is a guy who is a 34-time convicted felon, okay? He lies as routinely as he breathes. He's crazy. He falls asleep. What do you expect from him? I mean, so there's not going to be a normal reaction. It's not like, oh, George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush or Ronald Reagan would get a ruling like this and say, what is the prudent thing to do? It's not how he operates. So we're not going to see something that makes sense. He's going to lash out against people, probably put some crazy social post on at 1 a.m. saying he's going to do something. I mean, it's anyone's guess. The one thing that I wouldn't do if I'm another country is rush to the negotiating table to deal with him on trade. You already know that the court says what he's doing is illegal.
That's the question. Geeta Mohan, our diplomatic affairs editor, joins us. Geeta, presumably the Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Commerce may well heave a sigh of relief at one level, but it also leads to uncertainty now over what happens next. The trade deal hasn't been signed. Trade negotiators are there in Washington, and lo and behold, suddenly tariffs are no longer on the table. So there is an element of uncertainty that will once again crop up, and who knows, as Ray just suggested, what Donald Trump does next?
Well, Rajdeep, I agree with Daniel and Ray completely in terms of the fact that they use IEEPA first, because that was maybe the only big option that they had in order to carry out the tariffs or weaponizing the tariffs in the manner in which Trump administration did. Having said that, we first have to wait to see, like Daniel said, there are other options that Trump administration will explore. It might go to court again, but it's again a very long, tedious process. No country would want to wait and have additional tariffs imposed on it just to see what the Supreme Court of the United States of America is going to do. In diplomacy, we'll be looking at many countries who are engaging the U.S. administration, whether it's because of the weaponization of tariffs and the impact of that, or what the Trump administration can do should they not go ahead with the conversations that they are having at this point in time. So I don't think New Delhi is looking at this as a breather as much as the companies and businesses in America are looking at the decision as a breather. So it's politically more important and comes out as a breather for Americans rather than looking outward to other countries, because most of the countries, we just interviewed President Lula of Brazil, and he said no matter what, Trump is
the most powerful leader in the world, whether if he does something or doesn't do. And he's headed to Washington, D.C., despite the kind of acrimonious relationship the two leaders have had. Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have engaged as well. So most countries are going to look at trade as a bilateral issue, and that will have to be dealt with bilaterally. That's the sense I get. This is a setback for Trump, but it's a domestic setback more
Right.
than anything else at this point in time.
Daniel, do you agree with that, that it's a domestic setback? Because lots of countries have been pushing in because of the weaponization of tariffs to sign bilateral trade deals. Some sign, for example, India's with the EU. But the question is, what happens to deals which are still in the making, like India and the United States? We don't know about that. Do you believe that the uncertainty will remain until we know what Donald Trump wants to do next? Because he likes to be in the headlines. He's determined in a way to almost spoil for a fight in some form or the other.
Yeah, I'd say right now the domestic consequences are a little bit more predictable than the international ones because, as Geeta said, there's so much uncertainty about what's going to happen with all these deals, with relations with other countries. I mean, I've seen a great deal of caution coming from other countries so far about the ruling. Granted, the ruling just came out, so it's still early, but other countries' trade councils, I think they're rightfully expressing a degree of caution and uncertainty about this because it really is unclear what Trump is going to do next. I do not think he is going to go gently on this issue. That's just not his style. That's not how he operates. I do think that there's probably a good deal of celebration happening in some foreign capitals, and rightfully so. But domestically, yeah, it's clear in that it's a huge domestic defeat for Trump. That said, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there's a possible silver lining here domestically for Trump as well, which is that the tariffs were, by most accounts, not good for the U.S. economy. They were causing some inflation. And so now they're gone. So you could paradoxically have a situation where this, even as it's a big political defeat for Trump, helps his approval ratings in some way because it improves the economic standing of ordinary Americans. Now that's looking several, steps down the road, so who knows if that will really happen. But there is a
Right.
possible silver lining here for him as well.
What we're seeing is US stocks are already up, and there's a sense that they could have a very strong recovery, particularly those stocks which were hit by the uncertainty that the tariff regime provoked. A final word from you, Ray. It's impossible to crystal gaze with Donald Trump. You just don't know what will happen next. But do you see him, as I said at the outset, doing something dramatic to shift attention from this domestic loss of sorts or a loss of face?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know what it could be, but that's how he operates. And I don't even know if he does that consciously. I think he just goes from one thing to another because that's just the way he thinks. So it could be anything. I wouldn't be resting easily if I was in Tehran right now because he might want to do something big there. He's been steadily inching toward that, moving ships closer and closer in the Persian Gulf. So maybe we see something there, or maybe we don't see anything. It's just hard to say.
Right. Well, I'm going to leave it there. We're waiting to see how this plays out at the moment, waiting for an official comment from the White House. None has come. Donald Trump silent, no comments at the moment from Truth Social. But you could expect something or the other from the Trump administration to what's been a major setback to what Donald Trump has attempted, disrupted world economies. Tariffs ruled illegal 6-3 by the U.S. Supreme Court. I want to turn from there to another big story that we have, and another big breaking international story, because an India Today world exclusive. Geeta Mohan and Maria Shakil, my colleagues, have spoken exclusively to Brazilian President Lula da Silva, who is in India for the India AI Impact Summit. The Brazilian leader has praised BRICS, backing greater multilateral cooperation and the exploration of local currencies for trade. He has cautioned against over-dependence on the US and China, urging countries to diversify economic partnerships. He's also hailed growing ties with India and voiced hope of doubling bilateral trade. On Washington, he said Brazil seeks constructive ties with the US President Donald Trump, stressing dialogue over confrontation. Listen in to what Lula da Silva had to say.
and I enjoy to be respected too.
That's a very strong message, not just to President Trump, to the world, but to your people as well, that you want critical minerals to be produced and to finally be manufactured into a final product within Brazil. Having said that, let's then talk about President Trump and your relationship with him. From I have no relationship with Trump to a meeting to now you're headed to the United States of America probably next month. How do you define your relationship with Trump? How do you define President Trump?
Well, I would like to say something that is very serious. I got along very well with President Bush. I got along very well with President Obama. I got along very well with President Biden. And now I want to get along also very well with President Trump. The relationship between Brazil and the U.S. has more than 200 years of existence, diplomatic relations. And I want to continue to be a strong relationship. That's what I want. With the freedom that the U.S. wants for them and the freedom that I wish for Brazil. Brazil has a trade with the U.S. of $80 billion. 40 billion that Brazil exports and 40 billion that we import from the U.S. And there's a surplus in the trade for the U.S. The U.S. represents only 12% of the Brazilian trade balance. Of these 12%, 22% receive the tariffs from Trump. It's not the end of the world. And we did not apply the reciprocity law because we believe in the capacity to negotiate from the Brazilian side. I have my chancellor with me, I have my finance minister, and I have the vice president of the republic that are negotiating with the U.S. Trump administration. And I proposed to him a meeting, person to person in March. Let's see what will be the date so that we can put things on the table, the issues on the table, and reach the agreement that we have to make. At any level, there's nothing forbidden issue to discuss with President Trump on trade matters. What I cannot put in discussion is my sovereignty and the democracy in Brazil. This is something that belongs to me and my people. But from the trade viewpoint, I'm willing to negotiate with the U.S. as I'm going to negotiate tomorrow with Prime Minister Modi. I came here to discuss with Prime Minister Modi what is good for Brazil and for India in our relation. What can Brazil buy from India and sell to India? What our business sector can build partnerships? Because this is what's important for the people. What will the people gain with all this, with these things? It's not just coming from the U.S. It cannot only the U.S. win to be the winner only alone. What we want, and that's why we advocate multilateralism.
And you can get much more on that special interview with the Brazilian president, another major world figure here on India Today, 10 p.m. tonight. Watch that world exclusive with the Brazilian president at 10 p.m. tonight, Lula da Silva. Okay, let's turn though to the other big story we're tracking, the conclusion of the India AI Summit. That's right. The Grand AI India Impact Summit has come to a conclusion here in the national capital, and over the past few days, artificial intelligence has suddenly become a buzzword and dominated the national conversation. Major global tech leaders have promised to participate with billions of dollars in the India AI dream. Prime Minister Modi has unveiled a roadmap for artificial intelligence, but there have been skeptics too who have said that this was more about optics than substance, often questioning the planning of such a mega event. Also wondering whether India is too far behind the US and China in the AI race. Who better to answer some of these questions than the man who's really driven this AI summit, or one of the key men in the hot seat? I'm joined by Abhishek Singh. He is the CEO of India's Mission AI. He's had a tough 4 or 5 days. First of all, Abhishek, I'm sure you're breathing a sigh of relief that it's almost over. It has been quite an event, just in terms of the size, and therefore, I think you deserve a lot of commendation for having achieved that scale of the event. What are your 3 big takeaways from all the conversations that have happened over the last 5 days, Abhishek?
See, thank you, Rajdeep. And I must say that it had been a stupendous effort by the team that ensured that we pulled off at such a major global event at this scale. So, as far as takeaways are concerned, like number one, it puts India at the AI stage. The whole India has noticed the talent that we have, the capacity that we have of building models, building AI applications, use cases, our ability to operate at all layers of the AI stack. So, first takeaway, I would say that putting India on the AI map, showing what we are capable of and what we can do. Number two, I would say that this is like in many ways, this is like the Digital India moment of 2015, wherein AI has been kind of become the go-to thing for all youngsters and startups. So I believe that the interest that youth have shown, especially college students and school students, and the amount of time they spent at the startups who were showcasing the best of the solutions, this will inspire them to learn about AI, to understand why it is important for their future, and this will lead to a revolution like never before. Number third takeaway, I would say that the kind of investments it will drive in our AI economy, especially the global majors, looking at not only investing in data centers and in AI compute in India, but also investing in Indian companies, Indian talent, Indian startups, which will ensure that we will ultimately think of starting to build IP in India. But for long, what has happened is that talent has been exported from India to the US, and the same VCs have funded Indians in the US, and they set up companies and create IP there. Instead of that, this will turn the clock around and will ensure that we will be starting to build impactful companies within India, which will lead to a lot of benefits in the days to come.
I'm going to come to each of those takeaways. I find them fascinating, and I'll come to them in a moment. But I would be remiss in not asking you, did the organizers have faced, and whether you read social media or not, I don't know, but there was a lot of flack on social media, particularly over day one, over organization. There was also the entire fiasco over a Galgotia robo dog and how that was allowed to pass through your diligence systems. How do you respond to those who say that the festival tried to become too big too soon, and thereby optics took over substance? There wasn't enough time to actually have those serious dialogues that were needed. How would you respond to those who say optics took over substance and it could have been planned and organized better?
I would reverse it around and say that maybe we didn't focus too much on optics and we focused more on substance. The quality of sessions that we had was fabulous, and we did spend a lot of time in curating those sessions and getting the right people to come to India and speak around the sessions. What we didn't anticipate maybe was that on day one we'll have as much crowd as we got, because day one was supposed to be a light day. The expo was not open. The expo was opening only in the evening of 16th at 5 p.m. when Honorable Prime Minister is inaugurating it. But somehow people came in the morning thinking that the expo is open. So the numbers that we are anticipating, because for all the sessions, the Bharat Mandapam's capacity is to take almost 5,000 to 6,000 people only. And those who had registered, we were expecting them only to come. But we did get almost 60 to 70,000 people. And since the expo was not open that day, the expo was supposed to be open from 17th onwards, it led to some commotion and some bad social media feedback that we got. But what I strongly believe is that if you look at the videos of even on the day one, the sessions were like populated like crazy. Every room was filled. The discussions were very intense. So that is the proof that it was not optics or substance. Had it been optics, we would have focused only on logistics and ensuring that people get in. Number two, about the Galgotia incident, the less said, the better. It's not that we were showcasing only an Indian products exhibition. There were multiple companies who were showcasing products from all over the world. So, but the mistake that these fellows did was that they claimed that product to be made by them. So that was a wrong take by the concerned person who spoke to the media without understanding. And I believe because of that, the expo organizers did cancel their stall allotment and they were removed.
So could there have been better due diligence there? I come back to it. You're blaming Galgotias. I'm sorry. I just want to focus for a minute on that because let's get this out of the way. You're saying on day one, the organization may have been caught off guard because of just the sheer size and enthusiasm of audiences. And the Galgotia instance is a one-off. It shouldn't take away, presumably, from all the other wonderful, innovative startups. And that the fault was that they were selling the robo-dog as their own product. Am I broadly correct? And that was not told to you or whoever was in charge of the expo.
See, it's very difficult to do due diligence with regard to what people may say when a media, when they're giving a media bite. This is like if we don't even have that level of either human intelligence or artificial intelligence to predict what somebody will say to a media journalist on a TV interview. If they say something which is factually wrong and misleading, then there's little that we could do in advance. If somebody has a product like that, I will be happy to learn how it is made and how it is done. So the Galgotia incident is about that only. It was more about the wrong claim that was made, the misleading claim that was made, rather than what was exhibited. Okay. So that's one, yeah.
Let's turn from there to the more positive sides. That's the negative which captured the headlines, and the media often focuses on what captures the headlines. But the launch pad, you mentioned this as one of your takeaways about indigenous AI models. The Prime Minister has spoken about making India, in a way, possibly the third pole after the US and China. You have indigenous AI models coming out there, like the Sarvam model. Do you believe these models now can compete with the best of what the American and the Chinese are offering, or are we still playing catch up? Do you believe that this summit in a way is showcasing what India can do, but are we still playing catch up to the big two?
See, like Sarvam models, 105 billion model, parameter model that they release has been published on Hugging Face and against many benchmarks. They are performing better than many of the models that the West or China has produced. So while it is true that we are behind US and China, but we are catching up, and we are catching up fast. And maybe very soon we'll be leapfrogging to get ahead. But we should claim that only when we have done that. What we are doing is that we are providing, as government, we are providing all necessary support to the ecosystem, to the researchers, to the startups, to industry, who are the ones who will make the models. In fact, in anywhere else in the world, these initiatives are done by the private sector, are done by startups, are done by researchers. So the role of the government is to provide an enabling environment and all necessary inputs that is required to build such solutions. And the government is doing that. And we have seen what Sarvam has done, and Bharat Gen has done, or Socket has done, or Gyani has done. And in the pipeline, there are 10 to 12 more startups who are building similar impactful solutions. In fact, even in the field of small language model, Shodh AI is building a material science model, a physics model. We have IntelliHealth, which is building a medical solution for diagnosing epilepsy and Alzheimer's. So there are many more initiatives which are currently being done, which will ensure that that we will be able to not only catch up, but maybe leapfrog to go ahead.
You're using the word leapfrog. So are you saying that this gap that exists today, because there's a huge gap, you will well know, in terms of investments, in terms of just where the foundational models that the US and China have set compared to India. You believe that this gap can be bridged? Is this the next big challenge in a way for you? Yes, you've organized the summit. Yes, there's been a lot of attention. As I said, it's been part of the national conversation. It's put AI on the, at least squarely on the national dialogue in a way. But once now that the summit is over, how do you take this forward? Isn't that the next big challenge, to ensure that that level of innovation, investments take place? Or will we end up piggybacking on the American foundation models? Because I heard some of the American speakers at the summit saying that the American stack is what will drive the world forward.
See, again, I would like to clarify that we are not in this game of competing and trying to go forward. That's not our objective. Our objective is to build something for India, build something that works in Indian languages, build something that solves issues that we have in delivery of healthcare services, or services of farmers, or educational services. So we are trying to solve problems that we have in India, trying to improve service delivery, trying to bring in efficiency, productivity by using AI in every sector. In the process, if we are able to, our solutions become better than any other countries, let that be. But that's not the only objective. The objective is to try to enable building solutions in India that work for India, and ultimately these solutions will be something the whole world will look at. We have done that in the case of digital public infrastructure. In fact, when we are building the identity stack and we're building the UPI, digital payments, or the DigiLocker, we were not looking at which whether any country has it or not. We are building it for India. We are building a solution that we need, and maybe later the global south and other countries adopted it. In fact, in the case of UPI, you have seen even countries like Brazil and France are looking at it. So not only the developing world, but the developed world also looks at our solutions. Similarly, the way we build AI, what Prime Minister spoke about yesterday, about the Manav approach towards building human-centric AI, using AI for solving issues that humans face and bettering the lives of people in a very responsible manner. That's our approach, and the way it's shaping up, ultimately it will become an example for the whole world.
No, but can you just very quickly, tell me how will Manav translate into reality? Find words used that you want a moral and ethical, inclusive, accessible AI system. But there are legitimate fears that people have that AI will actually widen the divide. Even Sundar Pichai spoke about it. An AI divide could emerge between the haves and the have-nots. How much of these fine words is going to be translated into action on the ground in terms of making AI, for example, truly inclusive and accessible, at least in the short term, or is there a genuine fear of job losses?
See, like the way we are building and the way we are trying to make AI inclusive is like if you look at a project like Bhashini, which is one of the projects that we launched as part of AI, that was primarily to ensure that we use AI, we use natural language processing to ensure all languages are covered. The models that the West makes, they make in English. They are trained on English data sets. They are trained on data sets that's not contextual. They do not capture our nuances, our cultural nuances, our traditions, our national ethos, that is not captured there. So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to build data sets in all Indian languages. We are trying to digitize our own context, and the models which are trained by default in Indian languages, they will definitely perform better than any other model when you comes to multilingual context. So that's the way we are trying to address to ensure inclusion is ensured. As far as job losses are concerned, whenever a new technology comes in, some jobs do get obsolete, but new jobs are created. How do you take that opportunity? How do you do skilling? How do you do reskilling? How do you orient your curriculum? How do you train people? And India has a whole potential of becoming the key AI transformation services provider for the whole world. The whole world will need agentic AI. The whole world will need physical AI. The whole world will need edge AI applications and the forward deployment engineers that are in great demand. So the whole world looks at India as providing the workforce that is needed for building AI applications. So I look at it as a big opportunity of moving up the value chain from being mere coders. People can become AI transformation engineers and forward deployment engineers, which will be much, much more rewarding for each individual and also for the nation's economy.
Today one of the big stories, Abhishek, Singh, was the signing up of Pax Silica, a US-led strategic alliance of which India has become part of. Many believe that this will, in a way, is directed against China. But our signing up to Pax Silica, does that make us more dependent on the US in a way, particularly for technology, particularly for the kind of partnerships that are already being built by Indian startups with the NVIDIAs and the OpenAIs of the world? I ask you again, are we really in a position to become a third pole in this AI world around us, or is the US are we only going to have to do partnerships with the US, at least in the short run?
See, the global supply chain in semiconductors, in chips, in AI, artificial intelligence, deep tech is such that there are dependencies that every country has. In fact, NVIDIA will not be NVIDIA without what TSMC does. So it's not that any country works on its own. There are partnerships. There are understandings, and people work with trust when it comes to technology. So partnership between India and US is based on trust. Our strength remains talent. As of now, US strength is technology, and between this technology and talent, we get trust. What we are doing is that, yes, till such time we design our own chips, and we do have the capability of designing our own AI compute chips, because the entire design engineers, you look at chip design engineers, most of them come from India. So the DLI scheme and the efforts that are going on I strongly believe that in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have a chip that is designed totally in India. And then within a few years, we'll be able to tape out those chips. And then again, we'll become like kind of self-sufficient over the entire AI stack. But at the moment, yes, every country is dependent on some other country for some other needs. Our engineers contribute to designing of these chips. Our engineers contribute to most of these models. Our engineers do contribute to building AI applications. And similarly, the US has the talent technology which they offer to us for building impactful solutions.
My final question, I know you've had very long 5 days and you ended it with a dance or a song performance with a Naga band there because you are an IAS officer from Nagaland, your original cadre, parent cadre in a way. You've had this long 5 days that you've had to go through. If there is one thing you had to do differently, what would you do? I again come back to some of the criticism. There was too many VVIP movements. The traffic was not as regulated. People didn't have water. They had to wait in long queues. Would you have done anything differently to reduce some of the criticism and only focus on the many many gains from the AI summit? If there was one thing you had to do differently, what would that be?
See, in any such event, whether you go to Davos or whether you go to the CES at Vegas, any major global event where you get heads of state, where you get the top CEOs of all companies, where there's a lot of traction, where hundreds of thousands of people turn up, there will be traffic because the roads are not designed for handling 100,000 people on a daily basis. So if you go to Disney World, there is traffic. So traffic issues are normal. Traffic issues everyone battles. That's not that's not a challenge if you're doing an event of this scale. With regard to other facilities, I don't think there was any shortage of water or food of any kind. In fact, most people have appreciated that this was a zero waste summit. There was not a speck of garbage or a thrown water bottle that was seen anywhere in the whole premises. If I have to do differently, maybe we should separate out the business days and public days, because what happens is that given the kind of world leaders they were there, I would have actually wanted to have some free time for them to interact with our younger startups, because the crowds that we have, unfortunately, we do have a large number of people, and sometimes we do get very close to each other, which sometimes is culturally not acceptable to many other parts. So maybe we need to, will if we do next time, maybe we'll have business days separately, which will be exclusive for business leaders and tech leaders, so that meaningful interactions, discussions, networking could happen. And the public days wherein we get the citizens to also come in, join in, students and other stakeholders, that can follow. So maybe that way. But what we also wanted was that to truly democratize this summit, because had we done that, it would have been called as an elite event, not open to all. But yes, criticism comes in whichever way you do. But as long as the larger objective of ensuring that the AI moment for India has come, we have been able to achieve that.
Abhishek Singh, I really appreciate you joining us. I know you've had a rough 5 days and you've really been there at the center of it all. But to explain and speak about the gains and the controversies, that's very rare. But that's why you're the CEO of AI Mission India. I appreciate you and I thank you for joining me and sparing the time on the news today. Thank you so much. Abhishek Singh, the man of the moment in a way, as he says, it is India's AI moment. And hopefully we will take that forward. Let's, of course, look at the controversy of the day, because every day of the AI summit, there's been some controversy or the other. Today, it was sparked up by the Congress party and the youth Congress workers, some of whom entered the Bharat Mandapam, some of them shirtless, and protested against Prime Minister Modi, who they said was selling out the country on the Indo-US trade deal. The BJP has hit back, saying that this was a shameless and disgusting way to protest, particularly at a global summit. But the Congress says they enjoy the right to protest. Listen in to the political battle that took place at Bharat Mandapam.
AI summit hijacked by a political drama. At Bharat Mandapam, where presidents, prime ministers and global tech giants gathered, chaos reigned today. Youth Congress workers stormed the venue. Some even went shirtless. Others flashed t-shirts, raised slogans, raised one message. PM compromised. Delhi police moved in fast. Detentions made. Sources say entry was allegedly secured using QR codes. An FIR is filed.
QR कोड कोई भी आदमी ऑनलाइन रजिस्टर करा सकता है वेबसाइट पे। उन्होंने ऑनलाइन रजिस्ट्रेशन करा के अपने लिए QR कोड बनाया, जनरेट किया। उस QR कोड को स्कैन करके और अपने जो ऑब्जेक्शनेबल टी शर्ट है जिसका इन्होंने प्रोटेस्ट किया, उस टी शर्ट के ऊपर से स्वेटर और जैकेट इन्होंने पहने हुए थे, और उस स्वेटर और जैकेट को जो हॉल नंबर 5 का लॉबी एरिया है उसके अंदर उन्होंने उतारते हुए वहाँ पे इस चीज़ को प्रोटेस्ट किया, जिसमें 4 लोगों को हमने डिटेन कर लिया है।
The BJP is calling it nothing short of a sabotage, a bid they say to embarrass India before the world.
भारत आज एक ट्रस्टेड कंट्री की तरह देखा जाता है। इंडिया इज अ ट्रस्टेड कंट्री, एंड दैट्स बिकॉज आवर प्राइम मिनिस्टर श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी हैज conducted the foreign policy in a way where the trust and respect, the respect of a 5,000-year-old civilization, that gravitas, that जो भारत की civilization का ठहराव है, वो ठहराव आज दुनिया मानती है।
देश की कीमत पर ये लोग खिलवाड़ करना चाहते हैं। राजनीति होती है, आरोप प्रत्यारोप होते हैं, लेकिन हम देश की कीमत पर सौदेबाजी करें, देश की छवि के साथ खिलवाड़ करें, जहां 100 से अधिक देशों के लोग भागीदार बन रहे हो, वहां पर इस प्रकार के उत्पात मचा करके अराजकता फैलाने का प्रयास।
The Saffron Party escalated the charge, alleging the protest was planned at Rahul Gandhi's residence, calling him a traitor.
Rahul Gandhi और कांग्रेस पार्टी, the traitors of the highest order, देश के सबसे बड़े गद्दार, रंग में भंग डालना इनका काम है। जहां देश आगे बढ़ेगा, जहां देश में खुशियों की रंग छाएगी, वहां वो भंग जरूर डालेंगे। ये गद्दार है।
Congress is defending the disruption, saying protest is democratic right and that the youth is angry.
आज यूथ कांग्रेस के साथियों ने आई समिट में जाके PM इज कंप्रोमाइज्ड के नारे लगाए हैं, और ये रोष सिर्फ हमारे यूथ कांग्रेस के साथियों का नहीं है, हर उस युवा का है जो आज बेरोजगार घूम रहा है, और उस हर एक युवा को पता है कि हमारे प्रधानमंत्री कंप्रोमाइज्ड हैं, और तभी ये बेरोजगारी कैसे दूर हो उसके बारे में कुछ नहीं सोच रहे।
But here's the political contradiction. While Rahul Gandhi and Congress attacked the summit, Congress MP Shashi Tharoor struck a very different note.
What has been impressive is, first of all, the attendance. As you said, a number of presidents, prime ministers and world leaders are here, and they've come with a strong message of wanting to see a newly integrated world in AI development.
At a summit meant to project India's technological rise, politics ran the algorithm. Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, that's about all that we could pack in today. It's been a week which has seen, as I said, a controversy a day, but that's the nature of India. When we return, we'll have a special interview that India Today exclusive with Lula de Silva, the Brazilian president, that follows. I want to thank every one of you for joining me tonight. It's been another big breaking news day. What will Donald Trump do next? We'll wait and see what Truth Social and the US president has to say. But from me and the entire team here, thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri. Jai Hind, Namaskar.